Make contact. A collective psychosis is sweeping the nation. We're in the thick of the haze craze, and Elysian is introducing an altered state of IPA. Contact Haze is a tangled chemistry of mild haze, low bitterness, and an explosion of hop aroma. This hazy IPA bursts with notes of bright raspberry, currant, citrus, guava, and passion fruit. Available in 6-pack cans in stores and in all Seattle Elysian locations. Make contact. Must be 21. Please enjoy responsibly.
Discover a unique variety of music stations made just for you with new exclusive stations by Odyssey.
Relive the British invasion of the 60s with Counter to the Culture.
Listen to tracks handpicked by Chris Martin with Coldplay's Infinity Station.
Or sail away with Jugger Yacht, the best in yacht rock.
There are hundreds of new music stations to check out today.
From arena rock to today's hits and more.
For every mood,
every interest,
every passion, by Odyssey. Listen now with the Odyssey app.
Figgy, let's hit him big time.
Houston, let's get in the loop.
You all have great pulse of the city, and I really love listening to your show.
With John Lopez and Landry Locker. You're in the loop on Houston's sports leader. Sports Radio 610.
Where the hell are we?
I think it's 24 Greenway Plaza.
Where the hell are we? Landry Locker, John Lopez, Figgy Fig with you.
We throw up the H here.
We're a week away from Texans training camp. Camp Caserio begins in a week. And typically heading into a training camp, you know where you are or you know where you want to be and you know what to watch for. But in this situation, with this camp, with this new regime, with Deshaun Watson sitting at home, with all the uncertainty, for the first time in a long time, I really don't know where the hell we are heading into a Texans training camp. But I think we can talk our way into it. Tell me right off the top, Reaction Monday, John Lopez, where the hell do you think we are heading into camp next week?
I think it's a really fascinating time. I really do. I'm excited for training camp, very selfishly on one level, but not on another. Selfishly because to me, it's all the things I've done, been able to do within this career. It's always one of my favorites. Just fresh, it's new. The grass is mowed, the team is new. There's anticipation, and it doesn't matter if you think in your heart of hearts, they're not going to be really good, as is the case this year, or they got a chance to really do something. You're still anticipating it. And in a weird way, this year more than ever, just because it's such turnover, it's so many new faces from the top down. So where we are is we're starting anew, and once you recognize that, you can get excited about the season, even if no matter what your expectations.
You're talking about the process, and I'm with you. This is obviously a process. This is actually a startup. If you listen to Nick Caserio, this was Nick Caserio at the Sloan Conference talking about where we are, and this is the guy that is in charge of making this football team competitive and making this football team better. This is from his own words. Nick Caserio, where exactly are the Houston Texans?
Each program, right, you have systems and processes. It's all about systems and processes, and then how sustainable are those over the course of a long period of time. So there's a certain degree of continuity that's been in place in LA. So you're able to grow and enhance those systems and models as you go. So we're kind of in the infantile stages. We're essentially starting over to a certain extent with some of our processes and systems. So almost we're like a tech startup. We're in Silicon Valley. It's a number of new people. We have some processes that have been in place, but we're looking to modify and refine those as best we can.
Now, you talk about starting over, and you talk about the process, and you talk about building. And if you ever wondered where the Texans were, that right there at the Sloan Conference from Nick Caserio, that right there tells you. But sometimes you get a head start in the process, and sometimes you have pieces that are going to make the process more simple. If you look at this Texans roster and you look at the position battles and you look at the ultimate leap that many of these guys could take, it almost feels like you're playing catch up.
Mm-hmm.
And for the last 2 years, there have been two teams in this division that you've looked at and said the Texans are going to have to overcome this team to get where they want to be. The phrase last year heading into camp was good to great. That's what Bill O'Brien was saying. That was what Jack Easterby was saying when he actually used to talk. He was saying good to great. That's what they were saying. I don't think Indianapolis and the Tennessee Titans are even worth looking at this point if you're the Houston Texans. Because if you look at where they are in their process compared to where the Texans are and where Nick Caserio just said they are, I think the team that we need to look at the most at this point is the team that the Texans face in 55 days, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah.
And you could even make a case that Jacksonville, you're playing catch-up with Jacksonville because they're much further along in this process, and they have pieces that their ultimate leap or their ultimate ceiling is higher than the pieces you have on the Texans. So as I'm wondering, what are the Texans going to do? When are they going to get to where they want to get? I'm almost pushing Tennessee and Indianapolis off to the side, and I'm looking right there at Jacksonville. And quite honestly, when I do that, it makes me even more concerned than I would be when I was looking at the Colts and Titans, because I think Jacksonville just has a significant head start in this process.
Well, they do. And let's be honest, your general manager just said it. We are a startup. Doesn't mean you can't get there from here, but you are starting anew. And, yeah, Indianapolis and Tennessee are on another level. I mean, that doesn't mean to be insulting to anyone. It's just the way it is. And would you? And to answer your question about Jacksonville, ask anybody, remotely objective, would you rather be in Jacksonville's position today or Houston's? It's an easy answer. You'd rather be in Jacksonville's position today with franchise quarterback to be expected anyway. All those draft picks, which they still have a lot more to come. Young team, new coach that's proven to win championships at the college level. So no, you are absolutely right. Your expectations are different. You're excited, as I mentioned. You're anticipating, to be able to see the progress, but you are a startup. I mean, even Google as a startup, if you're going to be a monster team down the road, when you're a startup, you don't know, and you have to do all the right things to get there.
And you look at the situation, and I think the Texans. Let's say Nick Caserio is the smartest guy in the world. Let's just pretend Nick Caserio is the best GM, and Nick Caserio from here on out and from the most recent draft where he was kind of handcuffed, let's say that Nick Caserio is a genius and he does a better job building a team and making decisions than anyone. Even in that perfect scenario, that perfect world, how many years out do you think the Texans are from being, I don't know, a contender or a team that you put at the top of the AFC South? In a perfect world.
Perfect world?
Perfect world.
3.
You're talking 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah. To getting back to where you were the last couple of seasons, to have those type of expectations where you're saying good to great instead of startup, 3 years. I think that's good optimism. By the time that happens, Ryan Tannehill is going to be 35 years old. Tennessee is going to be done with their commitment of him. Derrick Henry is going to be nearly 30. We don't know if he's going to keep running the way he is.
Right, the tread will be off.
And the Indianapolis Colts are going to have to finally pay their young guys that they've used to build this core. And we don't know what Carson Wentz is going to do. Here's Chris Ballard on the Pat McAfee show talking about the next couple of years and where that is with the Indianapolis Colts in regards to how they're going to look in a couple of years compared to now.
Eventually, the bill comes due, but the salary cap's real. You've got to be mindful of it. Each and every year, it's going to eventually creep up.
Now, so the reason I bring this up is because at the highest level of optimism, you just said 3 years away. I think the Titans and the Colts are being a little less aggressive, but they're going all in on the next 3 years. They're trying to win the Super Bowl in the next 3 years, and if you do build something, there's a chance that they're looking up at you and trying to catch up to you in 3 years.
Right.
Now, the biggest question, and this goes back to what I said with Jacksonville, is with all these young pieces, with their new regime, are you still playing catch up to Jacksonville?
Right.
And that's why what happens in Tennessee, what happens in Indianapolis is really irrelevant unless you're just the ultimate optimist and think the Texans, their window to compete is inside 3 years. 55 days from now, we'll get our first taste of it. Jacksonville is the team that you need to focus on here in H-Town.
Yeah, and specifically, the quarterback position. How good is Trevor Lawrence going to be? Is he going to be a really good starting quarterback, or is he going to be, a top 5 guy as is projected in 3 years? So that's ultimately it. Now, they have more picks too, more young players and more draft picks. The Texans haven't had a first-round draft pick since
Titus Howard.
Yeah.
So they've had 10 total draft picks the last 2 years. 10.
Yeah.
10.
Yeah. And so you don't even have the young players to build around. So yeah, Jacksonville is going to be the question, is going to be the one that you're going to be targeting, so to speak.
So as you're watching the Texans this year, there could be a scenario where the Colts go on a run or the Titans go on a run, and you're watching those squads.
Fine, let them.
It's it's a moot point because you're a few years away anyways. The most relevant thing, like Tennessee winning a Super Bowl this year, is less of a gut punch than Trevor Lawrence taking the league by storm, looking like Justin Herbert, and Jacksonville looking like, let's say they're an 8-win team, 9-win team, but a team whose arrow's up.
Yeah.
That is a bigger blow than what happens with Tennessee and Indianapolis, and that's where you
right.
need to be looking. You need to be looking at Jacksonville. That's just where we are. That's the card we've been dealt.
Yeah.
It's not familiar. Last 2 years we've been talking good to great. Jack Easterby, Bill O'Brien, good to great. Cal McNair, good to great. Now you're just trying to get decent, and you're trying to start up, as Nick Caserio said, and you're trying to keep up with that team in Jacksonville. That is the most relevant thing going on in the AFC South when it comes to getting to where the Texans want to be and where Nick Caserio says that he wants to be.
You are absolutely right. 100%. I'm looking at this season. We're talking about optimism and things to look forward to and things you need to watch with this team. The reality is half this team is going to be different in 3 years, if not more than half.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, maybe next year. But Jacksonville you're going to see a lot of those same familiar faces. How good are they going to be is going to be the question.
And you got to look at the vibes. I mean, the vibes in Jacksonville are next level. I mean, you're talking about, the Texans trying to sell season tickets and people rejecting season tickets that have been on the wait list for a long time. There's a honeymoon going on in Jacksonville. Tony Wiggins, our guy out there that covers the Jags, talked about the honeymoon phase and the vibes in Jacksonville, who the Texans will face 55 days from now.
There was more than one thing that brought the hope. If they hired Urban Meyer by itself, that would have been it. If they got the number one pick, which they did, that would have been it. Because when they secured the number one pick, that was enough. That was enough right there because everybody knew they were getting Trevor Lawrence, right? Then all of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute. They hired one of the 3 or 4 best college coaches, in the last 50 years. Are you kidding me? This barbecue that we've been having, it ain't going to mean nothing when those games start because guess what? Derrick Henry and his 2 receivers, when they walk out of the tunnel, they're going to look like something out of a Black Panther movie. They don't care about how happy you are. Those dudes got muscles popping out of their neck. You got to go out and out-detail them and out-execute them in order to get wins, and that's what eventually is going to make this thing right.
But there is hope, and that is the thing to keep an eye on. Keep an eye on Jacksonville. That's where we're looking here. That's the most relevant thing, and the Texans will get the first crack at the new regime 55 days from now. You'll hear it on Sports Radio 6, and we got you covered, Camp Caserio, beginning next week.
And it leads to the question of the head coach and coaching. You just heard him talking about right there. Urban Meyer, they're not going to care unless you develop and you take these guys to another level. Then you start talking about David Culley and how long is he going to be around? Is he capable?
Landry Locker, John Lopez, Figgy Fig with you. The most important thing when you talk about hope and you talk about a pivotal moment for the Nick Caserio era is what happens with Deshaun Watson. And the NFL may have a deadline of their own when it comes to the next big step for Caserio and Deshaun. We'll give it to you next.
Live from the Twin Peaks studios, Sports Radio 610 presents In the Loop with John Lopez and Landry Locker.
Could a big Deshaun Watson decision be coming very, very soon? Very, very soon, about a week away from Camp Caserio. Could something happen that impacts the Texans and their current / soon-to-be former franchise quarterback significantly? This was Albert Breer with Dan Patrick on the Dan Patrick Show, talking about the Deshaun Watson situation, the precedent, and what to watch for a week away from Camp Caserio.
Can they put him on the commissioner's exempt list?
They can do what they want. They went through this a couple of years ago with Tyreek Hill. And I remember the question at the time was, why weren't they putting him on the commissioner's exempt list over the course of the spring? And I think, if I remember right, the Chiefs actually came to an agreement with Tyreek to stay away from their spring workouts because they just wanted to let the legal situation play out. The league's stance on these things is they won't do it until they have to. what's interesting is because the fine system has changed and because you can't forgive training camp fines anymore, that juncture in the calendar might come sooner now. It might be the start of training camp for them. And so I don't know if the league wants to come down with any sort of ruling without there being legal clarity. My sense is the league would probably try to kick the can down the road as long as the legal situation is still playing out. And the way they kick the can down the road is that exempt list. They put the player on paid leave and they basically push pause on the whole thing. And they've been able to push pause on the whole thing because Deshaun didn't show up in the spring. So it wasn't an issue. You would think that they would have to make a decision on whether or not to put him on the exempt list, unless Watson's lawyers can find a way to reach a settlement between now and July 27th.
Now, here's the thing. He mentions the word agreement, and he cites Tyreek Hill with his off-field incident a couple of seasons ago, and then he talks about the exempt list. I think those are the two ideal things, either an agreement between the Texans and Deshaun Watson or being on the exempt list, which is basically a paid leave. Now, the difference, and I actually think this makes it more likely that there could be agreement, the difference between Tyreek Hill and the Chiefs is that the Chiefs wanted Tyreek Hill on their football team, and Tyreek Hill wanted to be a Chief.
Huge
Deshaun
difference.
wants no part of the Texans, and the Texans at this point appear to have moved on from Deshaun Watson. So I think an agreement or a commissioner's exempt list is what makes the most sense. John McClain's going to join us tomorrow at 10:40, presented by Horn Solutions. He's talked about this notion of like fines and holdouts and all that. I just don't think that there's going to be much drama on that end. I think it's going to be, of all the things that the Texans and Deshaun Watson have disagreed on the last 7 months and 19 days, I think the one thing that they can finally agree on is that he does not want to be at training camp, and they don't want him to be at training camp, and they want as little drama as possible.
Yes, and interestingly, we've kind of been looking at this kind of backwards because we always talk about settlement. Albert Breer right there talked about settlement. Then we can start talking about and watching for the Deshaun Watson trade. It's really coming down to me to the legal criminal investigation. We heard last week that the NFL has never put a player on the exempt list while a criminal examination investigation is going on. So that's the one all of a sudden we have to watch. If that thing gets settled, then maybe they can put him on that list, and the Texans will be able to avoid all that drama.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how Nick Caserio answers that first question, because make no mistake about it, it's going to happen. It's going to happen about 9 days from now when Camp Caserio begins. We'll be out there. We got you covered here at Sports Radio 610. You can't really you can dodge it however you want to dodge it. You can dodge questions, and Nick Caserio has shown that he's pretty good. It's almost frustrating to many people, to many loopholes. Shout out to the loopholes. If you listen, you are one. The way in which he dodges questions. But when pads are flying behind you and you're on the field, you can't really dodge the Deshaun Watson situation. I don't know if we're going to get like 100% clarity, but he's going to have to say something, or he's going to have to at least make it clear we've agreed with Deshaun Watson that while this is playing out, he's going to stay away, or something along those lines. It's not just going to be like we keep this in-house, so on and so forth, because you can't do that when the pads are flying behind you.
It's too big of a star, too big of a story, and the whole we're going to let this process play out.
Not going to happen.
That doesn't fly.
You got to at least say we've agreed for him not to be here or something. You have to say it. It's just that's just the situation.
And David Culley too. He's been getting a little bit. It's been a little frustrating listening to him talk about. We're not going to talk about him. We have nothing to say. Well, you have to.
Well, I think David Culley from now on just needs to say that's up to Nick.
I mean, maybe.
I think that would be a lot easier for David Culley than putting himself in a bad situation.
I've learned that basically I'm the head coach.
Yes, you are. But basically Nick Caserio's in charge. So I think David Culley can just say that's up to Nick. That's all I would say. It's up to Nick.
That might be the best strategy.
It's up to Nick.
That must be the best strategy. But Nick Caserio, you know, when you have those guys going on the field and a guy who is on your roster is not there, you're just going to say we're going to let this process play out?
No, I think he's going to be prepared for this. He knows what the situation is, and it is going to on the 28th. It is going to be a little bit more clear that the Texans and Deshaun Watson have had some sort of communication, because that's been the question that we've asked. Have you talked to Deshaun? And it's, we talk about any conversation we have, we keep in house, right? That's what Nick Caserio says, right? Yeah, Deshaun is a quarterback, right? He's not our guy, right? Like, that's what Nick Caserio says. Can't say that anymore.
Yeah,
got to say something.
You got to say something.
And I don't think it's going to be a disaster. I think he's going to handle it as good as he possibly can. But it is going to be interesting to not see Deshaun Watson, which leads to the question that Dan Patrick and Albert Breer were talking about on the Dan Patrick Show. Do we see Deshaun Watson in 2021? Because we assume that a move is not going to be made by Nick Caserio, or I assume, I don't want to speak for you, until he feels he can get max value. So what does that mean? Does that mean that Deshaun Watson plays for the Texans? Doesn't seem like it would make sense based on what we've previously said, that neither side wants to move forward with the relationship, so you don't want to risk some sort of injury. So do we see Deshaun in 2021? This is Albert Breer with Dan Patrick talking about that.
I think there's a possibility, and there's a good chance he plays in 2021. I do not think he'll be playing for any team in week one. And this is regardless of what happens in court. I think it's gotten to the point where the commissioner can say, you put yourself in a bad spot, and in turn, that put the league in a bad spot. You brought negative publicity to the NFL, which is basically the grounds for suspending Ben Roethlisberger in 2010. The Ben Roethlisberger case becomes the precedent, and they say, all right, like, we're going to take you off the field for 8 games, and if you hit certain conditions, it goes down to 6, or 6 games, and with certain conditions, it goes down to 4. I think that's probably what we're looking at. And then once you have that clarity, then I think we can start to talk about, when is he going to be traded?
The whole thing about max value, to me, is already almost a moot point, because we're never going to know what max value really was going to be. Because when he's not on that field, you can say whatever you want, but you can no longer hide that he is not going to play for the Houston Texans. I mean, when he doesn't show up at training camp and he's not on the field, and they're running Tyrod Taylor out there and everything else, his value is going down. You will never get what you could have gotten, in February or whenever. So that moot point, it's a moot point, because like we can't say they could have gotten more. They might say we love this deal.
But you're saying that they couldn't have, though. You're saying that we will never know, but then you're also saying that his value would have never been higher. Isn't that kind of like contradictory?
No, I'm saying it stands to reason that in February, when it was just kind of reports and Deshaun never really said anything official, he still hasn't said I want out. I mean, it's pretty clear.
He's made it obvious, right?
Yeah, he's made it obvious. But right there, when there was still a little mystery and the Texans had a little more leverage, then when you don't even see the dude out on the field, that's obvious. The value's going to go down. So that's why I say, at that point in February, maybe you could have, played one team off, and this is before all the other allegations. You could have played one team off the other a little better. They're going to say they like the deal. They always say they like the deal when it happens. But we'll never really know what the max value could have been.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what it is. I think you'll have some sort of idea. 4-1s is where I'm at, and that's where I've been from the beginning. Now, there's no guarantee that that's even comparable to what Deshaun Watson gives you and what you have when you have Deshaun Watson, but that's where I'm at. I'll be interested to see, as this does play out, how many teams are willing to get in this or what teams become desperate. But we can agree Deshaun Watson's not going to be at camp next week. Nick Caserio is going to have to answer that question next week when he meets with the media. Can't be too vague. And then our eyes are just going to point in the direction where they've been since January. What is Deshaun Watson's future, and what are the Texans going to have to show for it as the startup / the rebuild / the building the Texans, or whatever the heck that is, begins next week?
Yes, and when they talk about Deshaun Watson, however they talk about him, they're not going to be talking about him playing in 2021. One thing that was curious there that Albert Breer mentioned, he said he's not going to be playing for an NFL team week 1. He's convinced, but he will be playing for a team in 2021. That kind of indicates the Texans are going to feel very compelled to trade him sooner rather than later once this thing starts getting settled.
Or someone's going to be compelled to trade for him.
Right.
It takes two to tango. Just hopefully Nick Caserio gets it done. The middle ground between too much trust and not enough. We'll get into that at 11 o'clock. The Astros and James Click and the Texans in Nick Caserio. But coming up, I need Lopez to make sense of something that the most polarizing guy in the front office had to say this weekend. Plus, we usually know the burning questions. How much do those change in the Texans situation? In the Loop with Landry and Lopez continues 1 week away from the start of Camp Caserio next.
We're making the stories from outside the loop matter to you. This is Localize It, presented by Westside Lexus. You're in the loop on Houston's sports leader. Sports Radio 6.
Help me out with this. I'm trying to figure this out. Take me inside the mind, or what you think one of the most polarizing men in town, in the Texans front office, is trying to say here. Jack Easterby, at Jack Easterby on Twitter. He tweeted this over the weekend, and it got a lot of reaction, to say the very least.
Expected reaction.
Now, we know what Jack Easterby has done. He's been the GM of this squad. He's been in charge of the cap. He's been Bill O'Brien's right-hand man. He was the first voice we heard when Deshaun Watson signed his contract.
Faith family football.
He was shoulder to shoulder with Bill O'Brien during the draft last year. And anyone who wanted to listen, he was talking about how excited he was about the direction of this organization. But if you look at what's happened to this organization from 2019 to now, it's been a complete 180 when it comes to talent. Deshaun Watson, once out, the best player in franchise history, has been gone. You've made trades, basically giving away draft picks to the point where you've only had 10 in the last 2 years. DeAndre Hopkins is in Arizona, and you have what is widely regarded the worst talent in the NFL. But Jack Easterby remains. That's what we know. Any way that you could tangibly measure what what's happened to this organization since he's been here, it has been a disaster, to say the very least. But he's still here.
He is.
New general manager. We've been told a new role, but he's still here.
As much power, though, as he's ever had with the people that matter.
And as much smoke from the Texans fan base as I can remember anybody having.
Anyone.
So he tweeted this out this weekend, and I want you to tell me what exactly is going on here. Because I almost sometimes wonder if this is just delusion, if this is hope, or if he's just trolling the Houston Texans fans, or maybe it has nothing to do with anything and it's something completely separate. I have no idea. But this is what Jack Easterby tweeted. Prosperity tests, adversity prepares, purpose motivates, accountability grows, love sustains, grace refuels, and truth endures. Is this just something completely separate from football? Or does this guy know what he's doing? Because every time he tweets, he gets this reaction.
Well, let's go through some of that, and then I'll tell you what I think. Some of these responses, it goes on and on and on. I hope you go 0-17. Leave town. Do you do this to troll fans? They all hate you. Tickets canceled. Jackass. We can't even go through all of them. As soon as grace us with your resignation, it just goes on. Snake oil salesman, on and on and on and on. The Texans fans are more and have been onto him long ago. So you ask the question, why does he do this in essence? When he knows what the response is, it's never going to be a secret. He could tweet hello. That's it. Just hello. And it would be 300 responses very similar to the ones I just read. I think he's delusional. I really do. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be a smart ass or anything. I think he's truly delusional.
Thank you so much, John. I hope you're well.
He's right and everyone else is wrong. Period. I'm right. Prosperity test, adversity prepares. And one part of this kind of proved it to me that he's delusional. Accountability grows. Don't tweet me about being accountable, Jack Easterby. because you're not. He's hiding in a cave somewhere. He's not going in public. He's living in that world, completely unaccountable for destroying what this franchise was. And he's got people protecting him, from Nick Caserio and, more importantly, Cal McNair, Hannah McNair, Janice McNair. Don't tell me you're accountable when nothing you do publicly to the press, to the media, to season ticket holders, to anyone in the NFL, nothing you do is accountable. So he's hypocritical and he's delusional. He really believes that we're going to get through this, guys. You know, just trust me on this. All these people that are criticizing me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they don't understand how we're really doing things. He's delusional. Absolutely.
Landry Locker, John Lopez, Figgy Fig. So prosperity tests, adversity prepares, purpose motivates, accountability grows, love sustains, grace refuels, truth endures. You thought accountability, the accountability is what stuck out there to you.
Yes.
Something else stuck out to me, and I'm going to take this a different direction, trying to figure out what Jack Easterby is exactly thinking and what his mindset is right now. The word that rubs me the wrong way the most is adversity. Adversity, if that's what Jack Easterby is looking at right now, is that he's going through just some adversity, that's more troubling than the accountability part, because adversity is defined as difficulties due to misfortune. Misfortune is something that you can't control. That's not taking over an organization, running a general manager out of the building, empowering King Bill, taking over tasks that you should have never been able to take over, trading guys, messing up the salary cap, bringing negative attention to the organization, rubbing the best player in franchise history the wrong way, rubbing the best quarterback in franchise history the wrong way. That's not adversity. That is self-inflicted. Adversity is something that you deal with that you couldn't have controlled. That's Andrew Luck having to retire last second.
Yeah.
That's adversity. The Indianapolis Colts having to go through that. That's adversity. Running a franchise quarterback away from the franchise at 25 is not adversity. So if we're looking at this situation and we're rallying everyone together and Jack Easterby is saying, this is just the adversity we have to deal with,
yeah,
I think it goes back to what you've said, and we're kind of meeting in the middle when it comes to accountability and adversity. That's delusion, if that's what it means. Now, it could have nothing to do with anything, but to me, even if it's something separate, and even if it's something you learned in Sunday at church, if you're truly, truly, truly going to church and you're truly grasping these lessons, then they should be put into practice in your everyday life. And the accountability, the adversity, those things, when he says stuff like this, that's what concerns me, and that's what rubs me the wrong way. And that's what has me keeping my fingers crossed and hoping, could be blind hope, hoping that this guy has a different role to where he can't screw things up, or things can't get screwed up more than they have when he's had the amount of responsibility he had from 2019 to 2021.
This wasn't bad luck, right? Oh, sorry. Shout out to Nick Caserio there. But this wasn't bad luck. This was a bad hire that got the Texans here. It wasn't Deshaun Watson. It's what you did to Deshaun Watson. It wasn't DeAndre Hopkins. It was trading voluntarily DeAndre Hopkins. This was not bad luck. Adversity oftentimes is bad luck. And this wasn't it. This was a bad hire, hiring Jack Easterby. And to think, hey, we'll get through this. I'm right. Trust me. Everybody else is wrong. No, you haven't been right yet. What is one thing that Jack Easterby has done that has been right? Hiring Nick Caserio? Maybe down the road we'll find that out.
But let me say this.
But real quick.
Here's the problem.
Yeah.
Here's the problem, John. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to cut you off,
No.
but I'm just saying this. Landry Locker, John Lopez, Figgy Fig with you. I'm the Caserio guy. I've been saying for 2 years Caserio's the scenario. But if you told me that you were going to hire Nick Caserio, but it was going to be after Jack Easterby did everything that he'd done and everything happened to this organization from 2019 to 2021, I don't care if you're going to dig up Vince Lombardi from his effing grave and bring him out here. I don't care. That's not a good trade-off to me. So if you're going to hang your hat on, I brought Nick Caserio here, well, great. You screwed up so much and so much went wrong along that time that it's almost not even worth it.
Yes, and what I was going to say is Nick Caserio, you're not doing him a good. You're doing him a disservice because you've set him up with this team around him. And then the other thing, Nick Caserio owes you you brought him in and convinced Cal McNair and others, that Nick Caserio's the guy when there were clearly other candidates that were as qualified as him.
To me, that's a slime ball move, and I'm not saying whether this is the case or not. I think we're assuming.
Common sense tells you.
You're assuming, and I'm not saying it's a bad assumption. You're assuming that Jack Easterby is putting it out there. Oh, I brought you this guy.
Well,
I brought you Nick
hold
Caserio.
on. We've both heard that. He was the biggest
I get
reason,
that, and he was on the jet. So I'm not saying that. I'm just making sure. I mean, he could deny it, but that's what we assume.
Yeah.
This is the thing to me though that rubs me the wrong way. If that is what the sales pitch is, and that's why he's here. Say what you want about Nick Caserio. You can say what happened in New England. You can say whatever you want to say. But as far as being a general manager, the 2-decade resume that he has, it validates him getting an opportunity to be a general manager, correct?
Sure.
I've had many times in my life where I helped someone get a job or I directed them the right way and all that. And as soon as they thank me for that or they say something, I just say, dude, you did it yourself. Shut up.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to do with that. That's all you. You earned that. If Jack Easterby is really saying, I brought you this guy, I brought you Nick Caserio, here you go. First of all, you should have done it 2 years ago without the tampering, because we would have never had that King Bill era where you're giving away draft picks.
Yeah.
And second of all, to me, that's very disrespectful to a guy that I think whose resume made him very qualified for this position. So if that's happening, first of all, it's troubling that it's being thrown out there, and second of all, it's more troubling that it's being believed and it's being bought into by whoever is making the decisions down the road on Kirby.
I agree. What you have to say, though...
But I think it's an educated assumption, just to make it clear.
It's very educated. We've both heard independently of each other that Jack Easterby did, in fact, have a...
This is Peacock. I love it! It's streaming your favorite shows, movies, live sports, breaking news, exclusive originals. It's The Office. That's what she said. Chrisley Knows Best.
It's gonna be Todd's Way or the Highway.
And Peacock original shows like Punky Brewster.
Holy macanoli.
So whether you're in the mood for every live WWE pay-per-view or every episode of Law & Order SVU, Peacock's got you covered. Peacock. Watch for free, upgrade for more. Stream now at peacocktv.com.
A big part of Nick Caserio getting here, as you mentioned, he was even on the plane with Cal McNair to go get him and finish the hire. But you have to ask yourself this. In this moment, for this team, would Nick Caserio have this job without Jack Easterby?
I don't know.
But the odds are lower.
I don't know because they've liked him for a long time. I don't know.
If Cal McNair did this on his own with no influence from Jack Easterby, would Nick Caserio have this job?
Well, I don't think it was as hard to get him either. Like the New England Patriots, Tom Brady was already gone, so I don't think it was as hard to get Caserio as it was.
I'm just saying the odds are down.
Let me put it this way. If Easterby 2 years ago hadn't screwed this up with the alleged tampering and stuff, and they'd brought Caserio in before King Bill made the trades that he did with Clowney, with Hopkins, with Tunsil, all that, then I think he would deserve some credit. But at this point, I mean, my gosh, you're basically bringing in a guy 2 years when it's almost too late because you've screwed stuff up so much.
Right. And back to the first point, he's not even accountable at all for any of these questions. All these questions we have, they've been asked. John McClain comes on here. He'll be on here tomorrow. At
1040 Horn Solutions
with us. And I'm sure it'll come up again. He's always talking about, we've asked for Jack Easterby. We continue to ask for Jack Easterby. And he's in a cave somewhere hiding, avoiding this accountability. That just rubbed me the wrong way.
Is he trolling, guys? Is he trolling?
No, he believes it. I'm right, you're wrong, Landry.
So he believes that this is just adversity. Because again, adversity is misfortune.
Yeah.
There's no misfortune that has happened from 2019 to 2021 with the Houston Texans that was not self-inflicted. You made those trades.
Yeah.
You made those signings. You handed out those contracts. J.J. Watt said he wanted to leave in large part because of you.
Alienated Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson said he wanted a culture change and people had too much power. That's not adversity. That is self-inflicted wounds. There's a big difference between adversity and self-inflicted.
By one guy in that building, and the guy that doesn't talk and is hiding, and the guy that has convinced the right people that this is the right way to do things, even though every piece of evidence so far says that he's screwed this up royally. It's incredible. He's delusional. He believes it. He's absolutely delusional.
713-572-4610, Reaction Monday here on In the Loop. Is there a middle ground between the way the Texans' moves are looked at and the way that I look at James Click? We'll get into that at 11, but let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to Ray. Ray, you're on In the Loop. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Terrible. Go ahead.
I just want to chime in about Jack Easterby because I am absolutely yeah. And I'll hang up and listen after I make these comments. Jack Easterby, like you mentioned that he's a slime ball. He's an absolute slime ball. Jack Easterby, let's look at it like this. The Texans were ready to hire Omar Khan as the general manager. Jack Easterby swoops in at the last second to get Nick Caserio hired to bring in his guys because he was afraid that if the Texans hire anybody, whether it be Louis Riddick or Omar Khan, that the first thing they would do, the very first thing they would do, is Cannon. That would be the first thing they would do. And not only that, Jack, let's look at what else he's done. He backstabbed the other general manager
Brian
that was
Gaine.
here that was only Brian Gaine. He backstabbed him, and then he went further than that. It became a power struggle between him and his best friend Bill O'Brien. So he goes to Cal McNair. It wasn't J.J. Watt that got Bill O'Brien fired. It was Jack Easterby. He went to Bill O'Brien and went to Cal McNair and backstabbed Bill O'Brien and got him fired. And I just don't understand. You know what? I'll hang up and listen. You guys have a great day.
I'm with you, yeah, man. I mean, I don't know whether he backstabbed B.O.B. or not, but the Omar Khan thing appeared to be in the works. And I'll just be honest. I like Nick Caserio. I think Caserio is going to do a good job, just given the card that he's been dealt. But if you told me just for anything else, even if you told me that Jack Easterby wasn't doing anything and he was going to stay out of the way, I interact with loopholes. We're on these streets.
Mm-hmm.
I know what the mindset is when it comes to Jack Easterby. I know people who have given up their season tickets after having them for damn near 2 decades. I know people who've waited years to get season tickets that have turned those down, and it's because of one guy. So even with me being the Nick Caserio is the scenario guy, even with me being that, if you told me that you could bring someone else in and that meant that the fans and the people that I know that are so annoyed, so upset, so disgusted with the presence of one guy, if you told me that I could have brought in a different general manager
and sell season tickets by the thousands.
Instead of that, I would have said okay, and I would have signed up for that. That's just where I'm at right now. I think that's where the fan base is at, and I think that's why the current mindset heading into Camp Caserio is where it is.
We always talk about there's no magic pill, right? There's no magic pill to fix this or that if it's a complex problem.
Okay.
In this case, there is a magic pill. I mean, just flat out, there is. If Jack Easterby was fired tomorrow or left, the season tickets sales would go through the roof. It's as simple as that. And yet he's still here.
Landry Locker, John Lopez, Figgy Fig with you. Help me find some middle ground. I need it. I really, really, really need it. From one extreme to another. The way I look at James Click and the way we look at the Houston Texans. Someone help me find this middle ground next.
Make contact. A collective psychosis is sweeping the nation. We're in the thick of the haze craze, and Elysian is introducing an altered state of IPA. Contact Haze is a tangled chemistry of mild haze, low bitterness, and an explosion of hop aroma. This hazy IPA bursts with notes of bright raspberry, currant, citrus, guava, and passion fruit. Available in 6-pack cans in stores and in all Seattle Elysian locations. Make contact. Must be 21. Please enjoy responsibly.
The ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz are some of the most iconic objects in Hollywood history. And in the summer of 2005, a pair was stolen from the Judy Garland Museum in the small town of Grand Rapids, Minnesota.
All she said was, "They're gone. They're gone."
Welcome to No Place Like Home, a documentary podcast series that investigates the mysterious heist of the ruby slippers. Please listen and follow No Place Like Home, a presentation of C13 Originals, a Cadence 13 studio, available now on Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts.